my favorite scenes to write was where Evie and Liz are talking. They're talking through like, okay, we have to make this second woman. The first one was a little too generic. We have to make Scrabble Mary. And okay, where does she live? So they just like, Seattle. They just like pick a place they've never been. And then they're like, well, she'd be drinking Starbucks and going to the Space Needle, obviously. And then the 17-year-old says the 16-year-old, like, you idiot. No, if you live in Seattle, you probably drink at a cooler coffee place. You would.
Welcome to Book Reporter Talks To, where our interview guest today is Katie Runde, whose debut novel is The Shore, and it's a Book Reporter Bets On selection. As someone who grew up in New Jersey, we don't go to the beach, we go down the shore. And it's one of those comments that starts when you're a young child, we're going down the shore this weekend. We're never going to the beach, we're never going to the seashore, anything else. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to the Cape, we're not going anyplace else. And that's where this book is set. It's a great story, set against a really terrific backdrop. And I picked it up, met you like months ago at a Simon Selects event. And I was just, okay, I've got to read this book. And then hadn't gotten to it. And then there was an article in the paper about it, this full page piece. And my husband goes, look at this book. And I was like, oh, that's the book I really wanted to go read. So I ran upstairs and got it and literally was taken away going, why did I not do this sooner? So welcome, Katie. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and always especially happy. I love all readers, but especially happy to talk to Jersey readers.
Yeah, see, there we go. Jersey girls. We're Jersey girls. We're not like that show, The Jersey Shore. I mean, it's just so many, like, people think it's a state that gets like blacked all the time. Like, there's so many things of, oh, who would want to live in New Jersey? And it's like, we've got skiing, we've got the beach, we've hiking in the mountains. We're like, how close to New York City? Come on.
Oh no, I really miss it. I moved away for love and miss it every day. And it really just contains multitudes. There's 14 million people in New Jersey, right? So that show, The Jersey Shore, is totally part of it, but I think we can get into this more too. It's one small part, right? That's totally real. It comes from somewhere, but it's a small part, I think, of that town and of the culture of going down the shore. You know, it's funny though, if you're from the beach towns, you don't say that because you're already there. So you say, I'm going to the beach if you live there. And so it's like a marker of the tourist if you say going down the shore, but we love you.
Yep, we love you. We love you no matter what. So let's start out with your telling us about The Shore, because I don't want to tell this book. You tell your story because it's so well done.
So it's set in Seaside Park, Seaside Heights, New Jersey, which is these Jersey Shore tourist towns. And it's about this family who is facing something really hard. The dad in the family has a glioblastoma brain tumor. And then which changes his personality. It makes him more impulsive. It takes away kind of your social and emotional balance, which is really the core of who you are, right? It's not your memory. It's not the like skills you remember. It's your social emotional piece of you. And with this tumor, it really does depend where in your brain it is. So in this character, that's what it affects. And then we've got mom and two teenage girls who are living their lives and trying to cope with this and trying to cope with this loss before loss, right? This really particular kind of loss where you're taking care of this person who's not himself. Meanwhile, they're trying to keep their tourist business going. So for them, that's a rental business. It's kind of an Airbnb vacation rental business. And the girls also have other boardwalk jobs that they are also doing at the same time to make a little more money, to escape their houses a little bit. And then there's a lot of other things going on as far as the ways everybody copes. So the girls have their own love stories. They insist on having this coming of age summer on the boardwalk. Mom escapes to an online group where she connects with women who are going through exactly what she's going through because she doesn't find that. And I would say everyone escapes through some nostalgia, through music, and through their own imaginations as far as like what comes after. Whether it's true or not and whether they're going to actually go through with it is another story. But I think everybody does that to some degree who's facing something hard. You imagine an idealized version of what might come after, right? In a way, on the other side of the grief.
On the other side, which you're looking ahead to because you know it's kind of imminent. It's not something that, it's coming decades, it's coming.
Yes.
So there's
Yeah.
parts of the book that mirror your own life because you did grow up down the shore. You grew up
Yes.
there. And your dad also went through this. And so as a result, were you plucking those emotions out, or were you changing them around, or whatever, what happened? Because it mirrors
Yeah.
your life so much, but it's not your life. It's not your whole life story. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely mirrors my family's experience with this type of GBM tumor. And none of the scenes where the dad's name is Brian, where he gets into so much trouble, and there's so much chaos, right? Like when you're dealing with this person who like has these really strong ideas of what his reality is, and you're trying to steer him through it. So all of them are fictionalized, but they all come from exactly what we experienced, like kind of bringing him out in the world and his version of like what he wanted on that particular day. I kind of call it like it's like a chaotic improv show, like you have to pick your battles, right? And kind of decide what you're gonna really stand up for, and what you're just gonna say, okay, we're doing this now. Okay, this is what we're doing, right? If it's not hurting anybody and it's kind of weird, we're doing this now, right? Whatever that means. So that did come from my family's own experience. And I really wanted to write about this age. I think a lot of people do go through some sort of loss before loss of someone who's not themselves in their own lives. But I think it's very particular. These girls are 16 and 17. And in my own life, I was 19 through 21, and my sister was 5 years younger than me for those years. And I think it's a very particular experience to go through this kind of loss at that particular age. So I really wanted to show these girls coming of age while they're doing this. I think it's very, very different, hard, no matter what stage of life you're in. But when you're just at the very end stages of figuring out your own identity, and then you have this big identity shift, I really wanted to show that.
Yeah, you can't rely on dad. You can't rely on dad to sit there and pull you out and stuff like that. And you're sort of shepherding him along. You're shepherding him, and then you're like embarrassed, and then you want to leave, but you don't because you love him. But and there's some times that are really, really rough. They're really, really, as a teen especially, who never wants anything to not be perfect, or they don't want anything out of the norm. They don't want to be drawing attention.
Yeah, it's a time when you're at the very end of that self-conscious phase of being a teenager, and you have to get over that real fast, right? That's so true. I also say too that it's a phase where you're really not done being parented, right? Like you have several years where you really, whether you follow your parents' advice and what they want for you is another story, but you very much still need them, right? To everything from doing a college application to what do they think of this person that you're dating, right? To even bigger questions. And you have to take your best guess when you have this kind of loss at this kind of age. I think that's what the girls in the book do. They sort of take their best guess and, get in a little extra trouble, I think sometimes, because they're a little bit of extra freedom comes along with their extra responsibilities. I think mom is she's a little like, well, I guess you are being asked to do so much more grown-up stuff. So, okay, I'll look the other way if you're out a little later, if you are, right? Like, who are you out with, right? In a way, she might have been more on top of if she wasn't putting so much responsibility on them, and if she was not dealing with so much herself.
Yeah, it's like, and then we're seeing the story through the voices of Margot, the mother, and the two daughters, Liz and Evie, and they're the daughters of the family. And then there's one page for Brian. I didn't know if there were any more as you went through. It's a very, very beginning page. And there's something that he says there that I actually picked up that comes happen later on. We're going to talk about that. But was this always the structure, that it was going to be in all these different voices? And did you always have two girls, or where were we at the beginning?
Yeah, this is people always talk about their drawer novel, right? Their drawer. So like my drawer novel is actually like I didn't think it was a drawer novel, and it was just from the perspective of the 17-year-old daughter. Wow. So the whole arc of the whole thing happened, but it was just from her, though it did include, there's some unconventional forms in this book. That's the book now. There are emails, and there's these forum postings, and those were part of her story when she was telling it just herself. But yeah, I thought that was it, right? And I looked for a home for it. Yeah. I was determined that it was just this 17-year-old girl's voice. And I think I really I queried it for about a year and came kind of close, but it was confusing. I don't think it was just that people were confused about her age, right? Like, is it YA or not? Like, I think it needed to be the voices of this mom and her sister as well. There was another draft where dad also came in a little bit more, and that slowly moved away and kind of moved to the periphery. And I like the version of it that it is now, but I think he needed to be in there in that interim, like I think he needed to be kind of trying to come through in the middle, in these middle drafts before, in order for it to like turn into what it is now, with him just on the edges.
And sometimes you need to get to know him better so that you could move him out there so that you can tell the story through somebody else. It's like,
exactly.
There was one time I read a draft of a book from a very big author. And I said, the little boy was in the hospital at Rome at one point. And she said, yes. I said, he's still there. She goes, oh, like there were like so many changes in the book. And it was like, I don't think he's there anymore. I don't think he's a character anymore. And they're like, oh, like, and that's what's really, really difficult, because in the rewriting, it's making sure everyone ends up in the right place. Is everybody in the right room?
Oh yeah. And God bless editors, and God bless the pinch hitters who come in, even when the editor has seen it so many times, right? Like, I'm sure there are projects you worked on too, where you might've missed something like that because you were so close to it. So I'm so grateful to the people who came in like after 3, 4, 5 drafts, and they can see these things. And copy editors are a whole other story. I could do a whole like episode on how grateful I am for copy editors who are like, this changed to this. Did you want to capitalize this? Oh, they're heroes.
This is exactly what it was supposed to be. Our editorial director is amazing at copy editing, amazing. But he does everything I send out. I have him look at everything, every note that I send out to readers, anything I send out to the public. And there are so many times I think I've nailed it. And he goes, the wrong date at the top. That's like, and I always sit there and say, did I do it this time? And he goes, well, there were a couple commas. And I'm like, and if you don't have somebody looking, and there are a lot of people that are too proud to share, so I'm not going to show anybody what I did. And I'm like, please take it away and see what I missed. Or if you're just somebody who doesn't know anything about this, are you going to be able to figure out what I'm talking about? And it's the editing process. That's what makes the difference.
Oh yeah. And I went back and forth with that too, right? A lot of like readers who know this world, I think this applies to any book, right? Like readers who know this world of the Jersey Shore, and readers who this is not a world they're acquainted with. It's really interesting because like anybody in the orbit of it or who's seen the show, the reality show, has some frame of reference for it. But then as you move towards as you move away from the geographic area, or you find people who are too young for the show, or, oh my gosh, never watched a reality show. God bless them too. They're better people than I am. But anyway, like you have to decide sort of what, like how much to explain, right? Like what reference do you just drop in, and what do you give a little more time to explain?
Yeah. What do you how are you going to structure it so that you're kind of pacing it along that works well? So what were your jobs as part of your family business down the shore?
Oh yeah. It's almost like, what weren't they? It's funny. The one thing we didn't do was real estate and like vacation rentals. That's probably not a mistake. I think when I was sitting down and like, what job should these people have? I was like, well, let's pick one I didn't have. Because I think my family had almost everything else. We had a snack bar, which was kind of like the Cisco truck type of snack bar, right? Like anything you can buy from the Cisco truck and drop in the fryer or put on the grill. We had ice cream shop. My dad's very first business was an umbrellas, chairs, rental stand. And we had parking lots. We had a couple of the wheel games with, we had puppets. We had these little like marionette puppets that were just like stacked to the ceiling in our garage. We had so many puppets for so many years. And I worked mostly at the snack bar, but had tried all of them at some point.
Right. So you knew like what those jobs were like. You knew that was, and the part where you wrote about the house turnovers in this book, even though you never have them. We used to go down to the Outer Banks a lot. The Outer Banks is someplace completely different than going down the shore. But we go down there and we'd always want to get in the house like as soon as we got there. And somebody had checked out at like 10 and we wanted to be in at 12. And we were we were good customers. We've gone down a couple of times a year, so they always want to try and help us. But then when I realized now how much has to happen in a turnover, and I really love the part where Margot stays in a hotel or a bed and breakfast, and she cleans the room. She puts the garbage in the plastic bag and seals it. She does everything, wipes everything down because she knows what it's like to do that. And I learned so much. Look, in my back of my brain, I knew what was going on because the house always looked great when you got there. But oh my gosh, it was like a team of 12 going in and getting it done really quickly.
Yeah. And it is fast, right? There, and we would recognize it from this traffic, right? Like this Saturday turnover traffic. If you realize every single one of those people is coming or going from a rental house, probably you realize the scale of the work, right? It might be a little bit different now with Airbnb. There might be more shorter stays, but yeah, it's a lot of work. And I even though we weren't in that business, I hope I conveyed the pace of it. It all happens it's all in 10 weeks. It's such a hustle, right? So whether you're on the boardwalk or you're turning over houses, it all happens in 10 weeks. It was funny. Yesterday was, a couple days. What day is it? I don't know. But on 4th of July, it rained here in the Midwest. And I woke up and I was like, oh, rain on 4th of July. That's bad.
It's bad for revenue. All weekend this weekend, they were predicting rain. It never rained. But people were still like, oh, it's so nice. I'm going to go down the shore. I'm going to get in the car and go right now. But if you're down there for a weekend, we were down for a wedding in May, and there's the pool outside, but it's chilly. And you're going to go out to the pool or it's cloudy. And then the sun comes out. Should we leave? Should we stay? And it's really a rainy Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July or Labor Day can make or break a shore business on the boardwalk. It
really does. It really does. We used to joke that August was for us, right? Everything up until August is just, paying the people that work there and paying the rent, right? And paying for all your stuff, right? So all of that. And then any money you make in August is what you keep, right? That's one way to look at it. But it really does make a big difference, right? And when it would fall sometimes, if 4th of July fell at kind of a weird time, so that there would be
Wednesday.
two medium big weekends, it would throw things off and you didn't quite know. Anyway, so every day counts, and every 90-degree sunny weekend day counts. And it really changes things, right? It's a very up and down business, and it's a very intense 10 weeks of the year business.
Yeah. And it's we've got to do it. We've got to make it work. My parents had a house at the beach, and the vibe changes in September like that. It clicks off. Labor Day weekend, maybe the weekend afterwards, there'll still be people down. And then the whole tone changes, and people start packing up Labor Day to go. And I'm like, but September's the best month. September is the month you want to be down there. September is the month.
It's the most beautiful. That's local summer. But it is so abrupt. And there's a scene in the book that happens on Labor Day, right? And it's just very abrupt. I think in the book, I describe it as it's the feeling you stayed too long at a party, right? Or it switches into a minor key, the feeling from one day to the next, it's a hush. It really is this and it's startling, but it's part of the rhythm of living there. That's not like living anywhere else. And it's even not like living in tourist towns in other areas, because it's funny. I was at a Iowa mom's book club one time, and I was on Labor Day, and I was talking about it, and I was like, oh, aren't you so sad? Don't you have feelings? Don't you have the end of the summertime sadness? And all these women looked at me like I had lost my mind, because they already started school 3 weeks ago. It's a 3-day weekend, but there's not a lot of feelings around it when you've already started school and switched into that mode a few weeks, and it's still going to be hot for 4 more weeks. So it's really funny. It was a real kind of Midwest Northeast cultural moment that I had to kind of explain. I'm not sure if I did it very well, but they all have the book now, so
they're kind of grasping it now. But it's funny because it's true though, because it's also when Labor Day falls, and Labor Day was so late last year that the school actually started the Thursday and Friday before, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good.
This is not good. It doesn't feel right. And so I felt like that. I've taught in the Midwest, and then my kids go to school here, and every year I just feel weird for 3 weeks.
Yeah. It's like, what are we doing this? Yeah. And in North Carolina, the kids start on the 25th because they want them to make sure that they're around for helping, doing jobs. In Virginia, I think it's a state law that they don't start after Labor Day for the longest time. I know it still is because they needed the kids to help at all the tourist businesses. And when there was one year that they were sending them back, it was my son's freshman year in high school, and the rentals were more expensive the week before because everybody in North Carolina could still go away. And I remember we rented the more expensive house, went away, and then the school didn't open because they were still doing construction. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we just did all this stuff and now he's going to be home for 2 weeks. Like, and it wasn't homeschooling. It was just like, we randomly decided. And I remember I went to the board meeting and no one was like upset about this. And I was like, am I the only person that thinks this is insane that we found out at the 11th hour that like something wasn't done? I don't know.
I'm with you. And then I was just on this tour I did some of the shore beach towns and a couple of Delaware beach towns. And it was funny because the kids there were just getting out of school. So it almost felt like I traveled back in time because we'd also then we'd been in like out of school and camp mode here for like 2.5 weeks. And I got there and it was like a couple of the towns were having like their very first really, really busy weekend at that end of June time because school had just gotten out.
I know,
so it was like traveling back in time. I'm rarely there at that time of year. So all was right with the world again.
All was really, really
how
good.
I feel.
So how often do you get back to the shore besides going on tour? How often do you get back? Do you get back every summer?
Yeah, I try to stay as long as we can. I have a 7-year-old and 8-year-old, and my husband's job is like he can take a couple weeks sometimes, so he can like stack his shifts so that he has a couple weeks off. So we try to go, part of July and August, and then in normal times we'd also try to go a couple other times during the year. I feel like we're just getting back to being able to plan for those kinds of things, right? But so yeah, we'll be going back. We'll be going back again, and my mom still lives in Seaside, so we stay with her.
But you also sit there and think about the 7 and 8-year-olds, like the before times and the after times, the way we talk about this, it's like in the before world and it's like an apocalypse happened. And in the before times, this is what we did. And then for 2 years, this is what you did. And now we're going to try again to go back,
I know. And I try to explain to them, it's ancient history to them. 2 years when you're 7 and 8, right? But yeah, the last couple of years, I think every year of kids especially have been affected in all different years, like 2 years. When you're 0 to 21, 2 years are all important.
It's very, very, very important. You also reference Hurricane Sandy, which most people who lived through it here just call Sandy. Like if just say when Sandy came that year. And if you don't live here, you think Sandy's a person, but it was when Sandy hit and you're like, Sandy hit. It devastated the area. And then Margot and Brian, the characters in the book, have to start over in many ways. Like everything is flooded, everything's dirty. And it's so interesting to me because even when I see a hurricane happening someplace, you think about, oh, look at that destruction, the whole town's gone. And then you don't realize getting lumber, getting sheetrock, getting all these materials to put it all back together is going to be a problem. And also getting water out, the dirt or whatever. Were you living in Seaside when Sandy hit or were you out of state already?
I wasn't. I went away for college and I haven't lived in Seaside, since I left for college in 2000, but my mom has always stayed in the same house. So she lived there and she was out of her house for most of a year, which was actually on the shorter side. There was stuff that she could pay for that other people would have had to like kind of wait around for, that she was really lucky. But her whole bottom floor of her house was just like obliterated. But she did rebuild and come back, but it took a long time. And I think there's a part of some of the characters in the book that you never believe that it's not going to ever happen again. Right. Mm-hmm. It's that combined with like a pride in the way that the town came back. It looks really beautiful now. Mm-hmm. This is 10 years later. But Seaside is really beautiful, and the whole Seaside Park and Seaside Heights area that got really a direct hit look really beautiful now. So I hope that I conveyed the pride in the family's rebuilding. It's interesting though, I had one reader say, also though, they the Margot and Brian kind of swooped in and bought up some properties after that, right? Which is a little bit like, there's a little bit of a judgment you could have on them as characters for doing that, which I thought was an interesting take that I personally was like, yeah, that's true. They did that. But it's funny. Then I was kind of talking about how I don't think they would see themselves that way, because they see this business as like the only way they can stay in this beautiful place, right? Like if they were teachers before, they couldn't afford to live in this expensive beach town if they were just teachers. So it's interesting, like in a way, there's a little, you could have a little judgment on them as characters there if you wanted to.
But you also realize that the people who sold were selling for a reason. They didn't want to do this anymore. And that's the other part of it. It's why didn't they? Were they at a certain age? So I would always sit there and say, there are times where you do things, and then there are times where you stop. Like right before the pandemic, we sold my parents' house at the beach. They were in their early 90s. I mean, it was like, okay, going back and forth, all these things. And my dad loved the shore. I mean, my dad lives to sit on the beach, lives to ride the waves at 90. Yeah. I mean, I am not kidding. So he was really, really, really into this. And it was a real moment of change for our family, because even though we did not go down that much, we knew how much he really loved going down the shore. And that was from the time he was young. And we belonged to a swim club when I was young, but after Labor Day weekend, all his friends from when he was growing up, we always went down the shore, and everybody brought the food. As you remember, macaroni would come in a thermos. Like it was just really strange times of what we did, but that's what everybody went and did at the same time. But you also talk about, you talk about these women with the food that are bringing the food to the house, these casserole. What are you calling them? Remind me what you call these moms.
Well, can I cuss? It's a B word. It's the B word. Can I say their name?
We're
okay. They're the casserole bitches. Right. And they're an extreme version, right? You know, of like, that was definitely not our experience. We were very supported by our family and friends, right? And this, during when my own family was going through this period of our own lives, so they're this 10 out of 10 version of what the character of Margot is doing, right? Which is kind of isolating herself. So of course that's what she would call them, right? They would also, if they had their own points of view, they would not see themselves that way either. Well, it's funny to go. Yeah. It's funny to go back to your talking about going down to your family's house. That's also part of my own family's story. My dad went to Seaside when he was a kid and just fell in love with the place. They had a house that they bought from Sears. It was one of those like Sears prefab houses in Seaside Park. He just was like, I have to stay here. This place is too beautiful to leave. I don't want to, so I get that, what you're saying about that place being such a draw. There's nowhere like it.
No, my mother-in-law had a house down on Long Beach Island. When we went down there, that vibe was completely different than Spring Lake, than Seaside. Each town has got its own feeling. So if you go down the shore, if you go to just one beach, you really haven't seen the shore, because each one got it. Cape May, Avalon, they're all just different places.
Yeah. And they attract a really different type of crowd. Seaside Heights attracts a more working class crowd, but it's a really like everybody kind of crowd too. So there was, I realized I just turned 40 and I've never in my life had a day like this. There was a day last week where I was doing a couple of these events where I started the day in Spring Lake and then I ended it in Seaside. And I went for a run on the boardwalk in Spring Lake in the morning, and it's such an upscale town. It's beautiful, but very, very upscale.
Right.
And you can almost tell by like the people's haircuts and like, like what kind of workout gear they're wearing on the boardwalk. And then I finished the day and went and got takeout from Park Seafood, my favorite seafood place. Shout out to them in Seaside Park. And it was just a bustling Saturday night. And the crowd was like the Seaside Heights crowd that I love. It's really different crowd from what I had woken up to. And it was great. And I realized I'd never like gone from one place to another like that in all my years at the shore. Like I'd never on one day, kind of like
one beach. You didn't go to a couple of beaches during the day.
Right. Exactly. Why would you on a normal day? So I was like, oh, it was a great day. I feel like I got like all of the shore town vibes.
Well, my older son was a very precocious reader, very, very early, and he read Mary Higgins Clark, like a lot. He read a lot of books, and Mary lived in Spring Lake. So we saw her at the National Book Festival one year, and she's, oh, let me tell you where my house is. If you see me outside, you can just come over and come in. And I'm sitting there like, there, like, don't tell Greg this. And like the next time we're at the beach, Greg goes, I run by and see if Mary's outside. And he's like on his bike, like riding over there. And I'm just there like, oh my gosh, what is he going to do? but she got the biggest kick out of talking to him. But I was just there like, he's really going to ride his bike over there, you know? But there's certain towns you do ride your bike on the street, but then there are also rules. Like there's no bikes on the boardwalk between certain hours at certain times of the year. And I remember one time I just wanted to ride my bike on the boardwalk, which means being up before 7. But I was up there like, it was like the Wicked Witch in like pumping my bike, like riding up and down on the boardwalk because I could finally do the thing I wanted to do.
It is so true. And there are some things like that are very particular to the Jersey beaches, right? And if you go other places in the world and you tell them, they'll think you're crazy. Like there's a small little area in Seaside where you can drink on the beach now too, but there are plenty of towns all over America where you can drink a beer on the beach, like, and no one's going to come and arrest you. You can ride your bike, right? And you do have to pay to get on the beach. Like when we were working, like at my family's snack bar, like, I don't know how many times a day, right? Like an out of town person who wasn't originally from this area would come in like so mad, like at me. I was like, wasn't my idea. I'd be like, I have a hot dog I can sell you. It wasn't my idea to charge you to get on the beach. And I'm sorry. And then I've been to a few other beach towns too. And I'm always like paranoid about it. I always ask, I'm like, I went to one of the Delaware beach towns after these Jersey stops. And I was like, hi, do I have to pay? I always ask. And everywhere else, they're like, no, it's the beach.
Why would you be paying? Right. And the rates change. And then if you get the locker or if you get this or that or the other thing, and it's like, this is like way more thinking. And you're going to get the season badge or you're going to get the half season badge, the week badge. If you're in the house, you get the badge and you lose the badge. There's something that goes like you get a penalty. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like a lot to think about. And then you get to the beach. Did you bring your badge?
Right. Yeah. It's a whole you have to work for it. You have to work for it a little more in the Jersey beaches.
You have to sit there and say,
I personally think it's worth it. I do think they're the most beautiful. You can swim in the ocean, right? We lived in California for a couple of years and I was like I was 30 when we moved there. And I was unaware, this is very embarrassing. I was unaware that the ocean is too cold to swim in, the entire Pacific Ocean, California. I was like, how did I not know this until I was 30 years old? But it's very cold.
And the lifeguards have the temperature written on their lifeguard chairs, and there's always a group of girls hanging around the lifeguards. That's just wherever beach you're at. Like that's a truth universally acknowledged. Beach truth everywhere. Beach truth everywhere. But it is really funny when you go down and you see certain trends happen in certain places of what the boardwalk is. You can't eat on the beach in Spring Lake. You can't even eat on the beach. You can have water, but you can't eat on the beach.
Oh, and that makes sense. There were all these picnic tables out there. That makes sense. That's what that's for.
You have to go up and eat on the picnic tables, and a lot of people leave their coolers up there, and nobody takes it. You just leave your cooler for the day, and I'm just there like, wow, I think I'll eat at home. I don't want to go through this much trouble. I don't know. My sister always used to go down and see my parents, and she used to say, and we had pizza on the beach one night, like sitting at the picnic tables. I'm like, okay.
No, I think that really is just like illustrative of like every town is its own little, like it's its own little square mile, like domain though. And there are all these things to know about every single like little beach town. I'll never forget the first time my Midwest husband, he was probably 19 at the time, I brought him to Seaside for the first time and we drove up Route 35, beautiful drive up from Seaside up to Bayhead. And we're probably up in Bayhead when he's like, oh, this is really beautiful. He's like, so what part of Seaside is this? And I was like, oh, we left Seaside. We left Seaside 10 towns ago. He was so used to the big expanses of space between towns in the Midwest.
No, it's like we've just been through 12 towns to get where we are right now. And each one has its own little way of doing things. It really does. And there are not a lot of books about the Jersey Shore. There really are not books set here. And we did this thing the last couple of summers. We didn't do it this year because people could actually leave the house. But the last 2 summers we did, where the books are set. And we did the indie bookstore that was in that location. So if you wanted to buy the book from them, this was the indie store to go visit.
Oh, yeah.
And but there were no books in New Jersey. Like what was set in New Jersey at the Jersey Shore? And so when I saw this book, I was like, whoa. We got to have something that is emblematic of the Jersey Shore.
Yeah. And it's not zero, but I did like a little listicle for LitHub when my book came out, so I was really digging and really trying to find them. And you're right, there are not a ton, right? Like you walk into a bookstore and like how many books have beaches on the covers? Thousands. But it's not a place I think that's fairly represented for the number of people that it's part of their lives. I really like did find that there are some excellent ones that I did come across that I can rattle off later for you. But it's really true, right? Like, and I also think that the other side of any tourist town, whether it's the Jersey Shore or any town where the story is about the people who run the town, is also an underrepresented kind of beach read kind of story. Mm-hmm. Like not zero, they're out there and there are some good ones, but I want more. I want all of them. I want all those stories.
And it's like, I love that you're putting the umbrella in the sand and how you do it going back and forth. You don't twirl it around. You go back and forth and you dig it all the way down. And you learn that as a child, like going down the Jersey Shore, because nobody's putting it up for you. You're putting up your umbrella. And you're like sitting there going like this. And then we went out in the Hamptons one time and these people, there were a group of people, they're putting together this tent. Okay. My husband is laughing because he's just looking up from his book and he goes, there are 5 people over there. I think they all have an MBA. And they have no idea what they're doing. And they kept opening this thing and they were reading the directions and it was just the funniest scene. And then they ended up like propping it up some other way. And he's an engineer and he was so tempted to just go over and put the tent up. And he says, no, it's more fun watching this like happen. And
talk about tempted, like every time you see someone just like kind of just twist it in like this much, you're like, oh no.
Rock it in an hour. The other thing that we saw when we were out in the Hamptons that was different is when you go down the shore, you usually stay for the day because maybe it's because you paid, but you sit on the beach for the whole day.
Yeah.
In the Hamptons, there was like people were moving all around us. We were on a beach in East Hampton. And it was like, well, I'm going to go to yoga now. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do that. And the people were talking next to us. And I said, I am exhausted from hearing a conversation about what everybody's going to do. Like no one relaxed. And who had the sunblock? Where did the sunblock go? And my husband goes, I'm about ready to throw sunblock and go here, just catch. And you could be at any beach where that was happening. But for us, it was there. And then the blanket next to us turned over like 3 times. And we wouldn't have that happen at the Jersey Shore unless the waves came up and then everybody moved.
No, well, I wonder if is it because like the culture there, I've never been to the Hamptons. Is it because like most people would be like their home base would be on like a big house that's like right there.
Right.
And so they'll come and go from the house and come and go from their errands or whatever they have going on. So yeah, there'd be more day trippers, right? So you're there, like you might leave your stuff and get a slice of pizza, but otherwise you're there for the day. You drove down, you spent 2 hours on the parkway, you're staying.
Sit there, you've sat in traffic with everybody else. And I remember you always sit there and strategize what is going to be the best time to go also. And it's like, what time is going to be the best time to leave? And people do this for like days. Well, I'm going to leave at 1. Well, the entire city of New York is leaving at 1. It's not going to help. So there's these moments that, and it's going to any short town. It's as soon as a holiday weekend is coming, it's when are you going to leave? And they actually sent out, there was this email I got the other day from, I don't know, one of the local like patches or something like that. And they said something about after 9 would be the time to leave. And I was like, and now everyone got that note. Like the secret of what you're going to do.
Oh yeah. It's only 3 years of my life that I was doing that commute regularly. It was when we lived in New York City and my mom was in Seaside. So for all these years that I've like lived at the shore, like those were the only years I was doing that. And I'd be trying to do it on the bus. That bus is a scene. The New Jersey Transit bus, they'll pack you into that thing and they'll let you sit in the aisle. So I'm talking about Friday afternoons. I spent some Fridays like sitting on top of my quilted Vera Bradley bag, just in the aisle of the New Jersey Transit bus. I was like, I paid my $21 just like you guys, but I'm
and how far does the train go? The train doesn't go all the way down the shore. It only goes to a certain point.
Yeah, I think the last stop might be Manasquan. I think that might be the last stop. And so then after that, you have to take the bus. It gets you there. It does get you there. It shoots you right down, but sometimes not the most comfortable way.
No, not the most comfortable way at all. But then back to the serious stuff. There's a moment where the family goes to Penn to visit the doctor, and the doctor visits, everybody goes. And that's a good thing because everybody hears different things when they're standing there. This is the moment where the doctor said there's nothing more that he can do. And all of a sudden it sparks fear in the family because they know it's not going to get better. Like every other time they've gone, maybe it will get better, though it's not going to get better, but you have in your head, maybe it can get better. And it terrifies them because he's already lost. But I feel there's so much well-placed emotion there that is rarely talked about, that you've driven into this book, is like, how do you actually feel when you hear that? And a lot of times it's not, you're not talking about the teenage kids hearing it. You're hearing about the parent or the victim or the person who's the patient. But this is the whole family sitting there, and the dynamic goes like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think the two things that almost anyone who has gotten news like this could, I think, understand are, right, like, all four people in the room are, they're experiencing it in different ways, right? Like, and based on who they are, where they are in their own life, like their own, like, you don't get to choose your like initial response. I think that's actually something that the mom, Margot, says, is she feels guilty that she's not bursting into tears right away, but that's just not what her body and brain do. They're protecting her a little bit, right? So she's worried about that, right? And then the teenage girls are also like, you know, they're both kind of just responding in their own way, right? So I think, like, you should never feel like guilty or bad or like something's wrong with you, because you don't know if you're gonna like process it today or process it, you know, a little at a time, or if your body and your brain are going to protect you from that, right? Like, then they all get back in the car and take this ride down Route 70, which is this like long 2-lane road that cuts through the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, right? And they just have to get home, right? Eventually you sort of like, there's an element of switching into like the next right thing, you know, to borrow. You can tell I've been home with little kids for several years. I'm like borrowing lines from Frozen. But the next right thing is they put on their murder podcast. They're into this murder podcast that they listen to on the way. They default to their routine, and they have faith that they will cry and process this, right? But they get subs to eat. They need food. They need to get home, and they want distraction for the ride home. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it did take me 20 years to write that scene. I don't think that, like, I don't think anybody who's just gotten to the other side of something like that would be able to like write about. Maybe some people could. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Lots of writers can do amazing things. I personally don't think that I could have, you know. But yeah, anyone who's gotten that kind of news, right? You like it's a little startling sometimes, like the way your own body and brain respond and that like initial, you know, shock.
Well, and the dad's actually a shadow of his former self. It's loss before loss. And that's the line that you have that is so great in this book, of understanding there's a loss before the loss. And it's hard to explain, but you write that emotion so well. Was it all from experience or shared experience with others in the same position? Because you really nail like what that feeling is like.
Absolutely. It's both. Like so since my own family went through this, you meet people through the years who have gone through this kind of thing. And actually a friend of mine lost her husband when he was very young to the same brain tumor. And so she experienced it as a widow and as someone in her 30s facing this like person who is not himself, right? And this version of her life really taking a right turn in this way that, like, you know, no one is ever prepared, right? And I've actually had several other friends, for as rare as this tumor is, I've met several other people, and several people that I've known through the years have been through this same thing. So you do find in each kind of person, you know, a bit of their own story. And so many people who have been through loss before loss of dementia, which has so much overlap. Those are the books that I turned to when I was looking for things. The two that I always mention that I read that just gut punched me, that seemed like they were telling a story that I needed to hear, are We Are Not Ourselves by Matthew Thomas and Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Kong. And then actually recently, just came out this summer, I have it right here, The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka, are all stories of dementia, but they are all told, their narrative styles could not be more different. One is like an epic family story. One is epistolary and it's told from this 30-year-old woman's perspective back in Orange County. And then The Swimmers does some really cool narrative things I could talk about for an hour. But those were the ones that I turned to when I was looking for the book you need. If you're a book person and you're trying to get through something and you find that book that says what you have been like feeling and wanting to name for so long, there's nothing like that. You remember like where you are when you find it and read it, you know? So those were the ones that did that for me.
And that's the reason that for many teams, rom-coms work, because that's their life. You know? It always is going to end up like really good. They said rom-coms are really big right now. And I'm like, yeah, I could just see that now. You know,
oh yeah. Those familiar beats, you know, yeah. I just watched When Harry Met Sally again for that's like a ritual, you know, you have to go through. You just have to like watch it every so often. And like the beats just felt so familiar, you know, the re-up and the like, you know, they meet up again, and you know how it's going to end, you know, that the happily ever after ending, those beats are so comforting.
But you know, what's really funny is some movies hold up and some don't. We had gone to see the new Top Gun, which is like amazing. And then last night, my son and he has a friend who's here from the UK. They hadn't seen it yet. And they said, well, we feel like we should watch the original Top Gun. So we found it. You know, the thing is right now you can find something on any channel. Like it's always playing. So we watched that last night and I said, okay, watch really carefully because there are beads of this in the next show. And if you watch this more recently, you're going to pick it up a lot faster with flashbacks. They do and things like that.
Yeah.
But you're amazed sometimes that some of these movies that we're talking about have held up over time because the story itself worked and it can hold up over time. And it's, the jets are different in the new one and blah, 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 but you're still saying there's that same vibe that's going on and it held up. And then there are other movies that you realize you're never going to watch again. Like you're just never going to have to pick that thing up again.
No, it was very particular for whether it was just you at that phase of your life or you and the era that it's very much of and and the story. And yeah, that's always a little disappointing. I won't name any names of stuff that does that though.
Yeah, but it's just,
they can exist in amber.
They just can't be in my ethos. They're just not part of my, world of what I'm doing. But it's crazy because there are things that there are books that you turn to. There are things that you turn to and you just say, this is going to get me through. And sometimes it's not the casseroles. Sometimes it's not the food. And it's like people show up with the food and you're like, that's not exactly what we need right now. He's like, could you just stay here for an hour so I can do something, do something like that. But yet the casseroles make the other people feel a lot better. And what did you bring? And what did you bring? And what did you bring? And that becomes like a little competition as well, But I also love the things they do with their dad, like being underage and driving because he's the licensed driver. Meanwhile, he doesn't know what day of the week it is. But if she gets pulled over, she's with a licensed driver. And I just love those little moments,
It's funny you say about the, that is very close to reality. My sister was a teenager and she definitely had to do that at some point. That's part of how she learned to drive story. So I think we're past the statute of limitations. I don't think anyone can get in trouble. But it's funny what you said about the what you need and how you escape because Margot, the mom in this book, escapes with a book with a fictionalized book within a book, right? Which I always kind of imagined the book that she turns to. It's this book she just rereads. She loves it, and it's a fantasy book, which is really not my go-to genre. Every once in a while, but for her, she just she can kind of time travel in this book, and it's this book for her that is so torn apart. She's read it so many times, I kind of imagined it as a fictionalized time traveler's wife that she might be picking up, which our copy of that is we probably just need to go ahead and get a new one.
Put it back together a few times. The spine is a little bit cracked. But he's licensed but not tuned in. But I saw it as a cry for normalcy as well as coloring outside the lines. The girl just wants to be normal. And if I am, my father's going to take me and teach me to drive. So just sit in the car, Dad, and you pull out your license if we need it. It's like, I want to be normal for 20 minutes. Let's just do this.
And these teenagers, they just demand, I think it's a great example of the times they just demand a normal teenage life, right? And they're like, I am taking this. No one's giving it to me, but I'm going to take it, right? It's also a matter for them of practicality, right? She needs to do something with him and needs to occupy him in some way. And maybe sometimes she just needs a coffee. She wants to go to Dunkin' Donuts.
Let's just go, Dad. You know?
Right. It's a bit of a matter of practicality, which like when you have such a prolonged time that someone's not themselves, right? Like maybe if it was a very short period, you'd be like, okay, we're not going to go get coffee. But you're like, this is years, this is going on for a long time. We have to get out in the world and go get our coffee.
But then it's also, the other sister takes him for a walk, and that's like a lot more involved. That's like, he goes to the old business. He's like trying to do things, and she's just there. Like, I think it would have been safer to just go for the ride in the car. I mean, it just would have been easier to go for the ride in the car, really.
Right. In a way, like, yeah, Evie's like kind of, she's very critical. She's like, I don't know why my mom, my sister bother with that stuff. Here's why my way is the best way, which I think she would say about most things. That she's a very confident person. I think she's like, I'm going to be a great adult. I'm great at this. But she's like, I don't know why Liz messes around with taking him on walks. Enough of that. Like, let's just have him be a captive audience here.
It's the right way to do it. But they're teens. They're really great teens. They're coming, into their own lives and loves of what's going on. Now, you only had one at the beginning. Which one was it? Was it Liz or was it Evie?
It was Liz at first, and she still had her love story. The whole falls for the bad boy in the band, that was still going on. And she had her sister. The sister was part of the story, but she did not have her own point of view chapters in that first draft, which was called, do you know what it was called? It was called Bungalow Empire, which was probably also very confusing. Probably like, maybe I could time travel myself and tell Query and Katie from several years ago. Like, that sounds a lot like a very famous HBO show that maybe people like, you're like, don't shoot yourself in the foot here.
Boulevard Empire. Yeah, that's like, yeah, we got that.
Yeah, right. I'm like, just give yourself a better chance. Like, I'm all for like, things have to happen how they happen, but it's very interesting. I don't know how many of your writers that you talk to tell this part of the story, but the fact that the way a book gets made is you just write an email and hit send and you're like, go forth is wild.
And it's very funny that you send it to the people. I remember reading someplace that you did 50,000 words and you thought you were done. And like you sent the book off, and then agents come back and like, it's not ready. And you realize that somebody at some point has to say, this is not like ready to go. This needs story. It needs more than this character telling something. And a lot of times people are taken aback, like, oh, I thought it was done. And then you start to hear the ideas if you're open to them. And you go, wait, this could really bake a whole different pie going on here. We could be doing something else.
Yeah. And, and you're not going to get that from an agent, right? If it's not for them. I've just heard horror stories about like, if they engage with people that they're not going to end up repping, right? They don't have the time for it, so like, it's a very interesting process with a lot of rules that you do have to just learn by trial and error. You can Google some of them, you can talk through some of them before, but there's stuff you just have to learn by doing it and getting your, you get your rejections and you get your come close, and then maybe you got then maybe you find a home one day.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is there's also got to be timing. This is a summer book. So even if you turn this in, it's a summer book and you need to hold for summer. This is not going to come out in December. This is not going to come out. And as a result, no matter how great it is, the timing's got to work as well for what's going on.
Right. Exactly. And there's so much that's a part that I think like, even now I probably only have like a little, I know like maybe 8% of like the behind the scenes, all the things that go into all the things and all the people that go into making a book. It is like, is amazing and incredible. And there are so many amazing people behind it. If you go through this process and are not in awe of the people behind every single book you see in the store, like that is mind blowing as a lifelong reader and person who just like, serendipitously has found stuff over the years. Like that's one of the coolest parts of the last couple of years is like learning about how the sausage gets made. I personally think it's great. Some people are horrified by some of it,
there are parts that are difficult too. There are parts where you think you're done, you're not done. People are making changes. You're shown covers, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it's just all this other stuff that happens, and it just doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It takes time. It really takes a lot of time.
And a lot of people doing a lot of hard work. Yeah. Which I don't need to tell you.
Pretty crazy. But I love that Evie, the younger sister, decides to join a forum for family members of those with Brian's kind of tumor to see what her mom is thinking. I like love this. So she invents a 40-something personality, which you really have a hard time doing when you're 16. And then she creates a second one when she finds out her mother's planning to do something. Were those posts really fun to create? Because this child is like, she's really going behind her mother, like privacy, insider privacy of what's going on, but she's got to know what's happening. You know?
There are so many layers to Evie being this, Evie being this like 40-something-year-old mom. Well, I think it's fun to share the names she chose. And I think they tell multitudes. She chooses Pamplemousse 7 from her LaCroix can. And then she chooses Scrabble Mary 45, which is very thinly veiled, right? Like she's in some way reaching out and trying to find her mom, right? Like her mom has looked for this community here because she didn't find it. And she's not sharing some certain things with her girls, partly to protect them, partly because it's painful and hard, right? And it's a lot. So when Evie goes and like looks for her there's so much going on there. And that is just my whole heart, is in that search. In the execution, I think there's a lot of humor, because if you know any teenagers, you know that it is a fascinating mix of them knowing you better than you know yourself and calling you out on anything fake or disingenuous or like poking any holes in your argument, right? Like teenagers are amazing at that. But they're also sometimes not great at knowing the actual day-to-day realities of adults. So there's this scene, one of my favorite scenes to write was where Evie and Liz are talking. They're talking through like, okay, we have to make this second woman. The first one was a little too generic. We have to make Scrabble Mary. And okay, where does she live? So they just like, Seattle. They just like pick a place they've never been. And then they're like, well, she'd be drinking Starbucks and going to the Space Needle, obviously. And then the 17-year-old says the 16-year-old, like, you idiot. No, if you live in Seattle, you probably drink at a cooler coffee place. you probably have your like really bespoke like corner coffee place, and you wouldn't go to the Space Needle. So I think it like there's this back and forth of like like what they get right, what they get so right. There's some emotional beats where they just nail Margot. Yep. And there's some things that they get really wrong because they are teenagers with Google and not grown-ups who have traveled the world yet, right?
Right. Yeah.
I loved writing those parts. Honestly, they're my favorite parts to write. If I could bottle like what it felt like to write those, I would have 30 books written right now.
Really, really funny. And it's also, it shows the anonymity of like being online in a whole new way. Like there's a whole thing of who you're really talking to out there. Yeah. Because she's having these whole conversations.
Well, it's funny because kids that age too they are really adept at like crafting. It's a second language to them. Crafting an identity is like, okay, well, we're going to mess around and make a fake dating profile just for fun and just to see what happens. Right. But there's also the more sophisticated, like, what's on your Instagram? And like, what is that? Right. Like, younger people would be horrified at how much I post on my grid. They're like, it's all ephemeral. They all want it to go away. Right. Like they would think I was such an old person for posting things on my grid. And I'm like, I like it. I want to see it there. I want to keep it there. It's my little scrapbook. But they are so much more adept at that than my generation is, I think, and they don't have any guilt about it either. Like they don't see anything wrong with like presenting these different versions of yourself.
No, it's all like just out there, blah, blah, blah. But they also unearthed the letters that their mom and dad wrote when they were dating on this disc. And it's like they're listening to their father's music, they're going through this, and they find this. And Margot had been away in England studying, their dad was home, and the letters back and forth of when they broke up. And all this, I can't share too much because it would just take too much away from the book. But that was such a funny thing to find this, like, it's not music. Oh my gosh, these are these letters they wrote to each other,
Well, it's a real relic of, I've talked to so many people and really feel this myself. Like that's sort of the magic of fiction. So far, if anyone out there like has the emails from that time of your life, right? If you were kind of coming of age, like one way or another, whether you were in college or just after in the early days of email. So for these characters, that's like the late 90s. And you have them somehow, please find me because I don't want to read all your business, but if you want me to, I would love to. Like, so far I haven't found anyone who kept it, right? Like for whatever reason, you had like 1 megabyte of storage, right? Or like, or your college email address was going away, or you got hacked because people got hacked way more often than, right? Like, or whatever reason. These things don't exist. So I was so excited to use fiction to like bring back these things I wish that I had, and that anyone I've talked to wishes they had. But it's also like a very web 1.0 kind of thing. It's this like, it was a brand new way to communicate that also had much longer gaps in between, right? That the way that the girls communicate in this like constant texting, right? Like it would be a foreign language to them to be like, oh yeah, you sent 2 emails and then you didn't send any for 6 months. That's how life worked, and that's how email worked in its early days. So it's such, anyway, both the method of communication and the frequency and the communication itself is just it's such a relic, and it's such a relic of this very specific slice of time, this like, I don't know, 5 to 7 years maybe at the most.
At the most.
It's not very long. Yeah.
Well, just picture, we started our site in 1996 with one site on AOL. Okay. So picture this. So it was like you had to dial up. We had a 56K modem came in like in a couple of months after we started, and we were rocking. I mean, like really.
Oh.
But what I say is, I think I've got my AOL mail someplace. I mean, I think I had it like backed up at some point, because it's been AOL mail and then this other mail that I have now, and that's kind of been it. But sometimes you're going back and like my regular email address, my business email address is so full that they keep telling me I have to delete. And I go back and find things from like 2008 and get rid of them, like people submitting insertion orders or something. But I'm like, why did I never clean this out like every year? Because now I probably have, almost, the 90 megabytes I don't need anymore. But when we were back then, we had these message boards and you had all this kind of stuff. It was the early days. And only one publisher had email at the time. So we used to have to fax to get the review requests and fax the reviews to people, because there was no other way to do it. And you look back on that and you're right. It was so primitive. If you put something up on a message board, you didn't know if somebody was going to come back and answer you right away, but they're used to complete conversations. And when they're presenting this persona that they want their mother to see, especially when she decides they're going to probably make a big life change they don't want to make. And I love the way they create the Seattle mom that's saying, oh no, you shouldn't do that. And it's great. It's great.
Oh yeah. Well, I found it. I found one person who has her archives. Great. That's great. You have some love letters in there. It sounds like it's more business related,
I'll
but
put them I'll see what I got, and I can put on a disc. I'll ship it to you. Not a problem. There's also this night where Margot senses that something special has happened to Liz and she wants to celebrate it. And she's just picking up something from her daughter. And she wants Liz to know that she's reading her, but in a very quiet way. And she just says, you want a glass of wine? And this is not something she's ever offered her daughter before. And I love that. They weren't talking about it. They were noting it. There was just this moment. And there are times when talking is not needed sometimes, isn't there? And you just sit there and go, I got it.
Yeah. And especially mothers and daughters at that age, it can be so hard, because a daughter at that age, and especially in the vibes that they've been exchanging that whole summer, which are so complicated and full of such pain, there's a lot of holding back on both sides, right? But I think my kids are much littler, but I think that the lesson that is the same, whether they're 7, whether they're newborns or in their 30s, is like, you just keep trying and you try something else and you keep showing up, and it's amazing the things that work sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you just keep trying and you keep showing up for them. And it was a very impulsive decision on Margot's part, and she made almost all her parenting decisions are pretty impulsive in this whole summer. She's like, sure. Like, she doesn't really know what the rules are herself for these teenage girls. So she's like, sure. And then she'll get mad at them one time for staying out late and then really get on their case the next time. It feels arbitrary to her too. So she just keeps trying, and she has this impulse, and it works. And I think that that's a lesson that I think parents at any age can see, and the thing you think is going to work is never the thing. And it's also funny too, the things that register with kids that you might not have even thought were important.
Right.
And I think that applies to all ages of kids too. They'll tell you something they remembered. Like even my little kids will be like, "Oh yeah, remember we went for those we let us get those gummy bears on our ice cream 5 years ago." I'm like, "You don't know what you just had for lunch, and this is like a special moment. You'll take them to Disney World. They don't remember anything. So you never know, right? So like you never know what's gonna register."
No, but I will tell you, in the teen years, you ride in the car. And somehow driving in the car, they talk and they tell you things. They have to be sitting in the front seat, and then all of a sudden you learn things. So every time somebody goes, "I really don't know what's in his head," I go for a ride. You might learn it. There's going to be complete silence. It's one or the other. So
yeah. And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard when you keep guessing wrong. It's like, but if you keep showing up, eventually.
It's part of being the mom. It's just part of being the mom, But, then we're going to go back full circle, because there's this line at the beginning of the book, and let's go where we go full circle at the end. And there's a moment after Brian's death where Margot finds a post written by Brian that just has the word Ember in it. It's just on this little Post-it note. And it's a word on his page, and it's in the front of the book as well. So I did pick up that these two things, I think, go together. And the beautiful lines that follow, these are some of those beautiful lines that I read in the book, where Ember was the last glow in the dark after a riot of flames. Ember didn't demand that you do anything else but sit and watch it until it is gone. Ember still emitted warmth for an hour. Ember said, "Don't leave me alone." The embers you stay and huddle closer together as the heat sinks into the ground. When the ember went away, it wasn't all at once, but gradual until it was safe to sleep or leave. And I really love that line. And am I right that those two things are tied together?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's also another sort of like doing something in fiction that doesn't really happen that way in real life, right? It's like this is like why you read instead of watching a movie, right? Like, and why you read, because life is so much less artful than that, right? Like, they'll like this is like the evening that he dies, and she's alone in a room trying to get her dress off, like, and then she ends up and she's just been down a terrible just Facebook rabbit hole, feeling terrible, like you do whenever, like just stay away from that. And this is what fiction can do, right? Like this is like the things are going to be okay for her. This is the like what's in her head, and that she knows from her own wisdom and experience, right? That might not be front and center in her brain, like in that particular incredibly hard, lonely night. So those are the moments that I read for. This, this is what I'm always in search of in my reading. I want those moments that take the chaos and that take these just unimaginably hard things and do something that you can't do in real life, so I hope that moment for her like makes people feel that, like we've all had those moments of chaos and sadness and loneliness, and maybe call on that moment of beauty in a way that might not really happen, on that really hard night.
Yeah. But you sit there and you just get it. It was like you were just sitting and waiting, and it's going out.
Yes.
Like
and there's a communication that also like between her husband and her that wasn't also possible in real life, but it is in this way.
Yeah. No, that was just beautiful. I definitely was reading that. I was going, okay, got it. Every once in a while when I'm reading, I was like, oh, this is like really nice. This is what I like really, really do. Wow. I actually did figure out that those two things tied together. Woof, So the title, The Shore, after you decided you didn't want to go to jail, the shore came up along the way. Did that take a long time to come together?
It even sold with a different title, and the title, I think it was fine to say this. The title that it ended up selling with was called A Bright and Invincible Thing, which I took from like this chapter at the end that then I ended up cutting to. Or this paragraph ended up cutting. You should see the ridiculous list of titles that I proposed in between. And this was from Nan Graham at Scribner, who is just a genius person.
Right.
And she just, I think, like with all her experience and, kind of like vision in publishing, like she sees the whole thing all the way to the end. Like she sees it on the shelf, and she sees the whole story, and like she can see 10, 15, 100,000 steps ahead to like how it would resonate. And she's like that, she proposed it. And like immediately it was like, yes, it's almost like it's like a kid's name,
Right,
like think of all, you think of the things, like it's actually one of my kids' favorite things to ask, they were like, what were you going to name us? And and I'm like, no, this kid's name is not Hazel. Obviously she's, like that's not your name. It's in my notes app somewhere. But so anyway, like I think that was a lucky thing, but if Nan Graham is thinking of something, there's no luck. It's just like, she's very smart.
You just hit it. She hit it out of the park. She hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
It's like absolutely. And the cover's great because it really does. It's emblematic of a seaside, like with the Ferris wheel, which terrifies me. I mean, being up there, oh my gosh, so scary, so scary.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Oh, I agree. It was funny. I was just talking with some writer friends about how we are really not graphic designers. Every writer at some point will have to do some graphic design, like whether you work in your college paper or putting together a newsletter or something. And every time you're like, oh no, this is not what I'm great at. But so there are, it's Tristan Offit and Jaya Michelli were responsible for that beautiful cover. And my only like, I just sent kind of like notes on vibes, and I was like, it would be great if it had the feeling of neon light, which I'm like, that's a very writer thing to say. And then a fantastic graphic designer makes that like look like that, Oh,
exactly. Your dream. And somebody walking on the beach. There are two people walking on the beach, and you don't really notice that right away. You notice it when you look longer. So
yeah, and kind of the way you would on like an evening, right? There's things you would see in the dark and things that would kind of come out of the dark, right? If you were standing there long enough. They hit that out of the park too. I am so happy with the cover. I think it's beautiful.
Staring at the Ferris wheel still terrified me. Like seriously. And it was really funny because the American Dream is this new mall that opened. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Like by the metal, it's just absurd. And it's got this Ferris wheel, and I passed it on the turnpike the other day, and I was like, who would want to be up there? Like
on top of the turnpike. That's a bold move. I did not visit American Dream while I was back in Jersey. I did hit up Jersey Gardens for the first time in quite a long time, and talk about holds up. Great. Loved it. No notes.
It's like completely there. No problems, folks. So the audiobook has got this ensemble cast. Was that decided like early on, or what happened with because it's really terrific the way you have all different voices.
The cast did a beautiful job, and I'm kind of like metering it out, like it would be like personally a lot to hear it all the way through. So I'm up to like the emails part. And they did just a beautiful job. It is amazing what these actors can do with these parts. Like it's almost like startling in the best possible way. Like when you hear what they do with it as actors. And honestly too, it's really personally meaningful to me that they did this ensemble cast, because this is the only type of fiction I can listen to on audio are ensemble casts. Otherwise, if it's one narrator, I have a hard time. I like to just read it,
It's like my book is being performed.
Yes. So I thought they did just a beautiful, beautiful job.
So are you working on a next book?
I'm just starting to write fiction again. And to be perfectly honest, I was very freaked out because I hadn't written a lot of fiction in the last year. But I am like able to I'm able to go there. And I was very nervous about it. This book took a long time. And the past year I hadn't, but I did Jamie Attenberg's 1,000 Words of Summer, kind of kickstarted me. And I'm turning it down to 300 words a day. I think that's a very like attainable, whatever else you have going on in life, you can do that goal. And I have been having a really good time with it. I'm trying out a couple projects. So I'm still obsessed with finding your person when you're really young.
Right.
Like that happens in this book. And I don't think any of the technology and the sort of web 1.0 part of this is totally, I'm not totally done with that either. And I'm definitely not done with seaside or beach towns. TBD if it'll be like seaside or fictional, but I'm not done. Definitely not done telling stories that are set in these places, because I think if anything, this book just made me realize how many more stories there are. Like even talking to people in my own life since it's come out, I'm like, there are so many stories that need to be told in these places.
And they're just fun stories that you want to just sit there and share with people. It's like you're completely there. Well, I look forward to another book. The 300 words a day, it's really interesting. Sally Hepworth was writing during the pandemic, and she was doing 350 a day because she could sit down and do 350 and then go take care of the kids. And then you could do 350 and do their homework, and then you could do 350. But any more than that, if you said you were going to do 1,000, you did not have time to do that. You didn't have time.
Yeah. 350 that's one page. And I think like I always feel better when I'm in that practice. You know, if you're a writer, you never quite feel like yourself if you're not in that practice.
Right.
You know, whatever comes out of it, like you're kind of stuck with it, unfortunately.
And some of it's great and some of it's not, but some of it, the thought process is going to get you to look, you had one narrator and then what you had to completely change to do, and to write in 4 different voices, even if one is just one page, you had to be in that person's head for the rest of them. And
Oh
you
yeah.
had to write that character doing things that he didn't even know he was doing. So that's, yeah, it's a lot.
Oh yeah. I'm a big Anne Lamott Bird by Bird fan.
Yeah.
You know, like I've returned to that book so many times, you know, and she's just, I know they're all different kind of ways to look at this, but I am a fan of the practice is up to you and the product. It sounds real woo woo, but like it's your job to show up for the practice.
Yeah.
And
it's your job.
The rest is not really up to you, but you can keep the faith that if you've done it before.
Some books authors write are better than others. Some hit at a certain time and it'll be better than something else. Right now, it's like you can't predict like where people are going to go next. You really don't know. It's people are looking for story. They're looking for good story, and this really holds up as a great story. There was so much to talk about. I mean, we ended up talking about so many different angles of it, but you know, it just starts out with the shore and you go from there.
Wow. Oh yeah. This was so much fun and was so much fun to talk about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I will see you with your beach badge on the beach at some point. And the beach badge will be priced differently according to what beach you're at. And the
just pay attention to the rules. Yeah.
It's either a weekly badge, the monthly badge, or the whole season. And someday it's going to be the whole season. You know?
And don't lose that one. Nope.
Yeah, that's a very expensive one. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again.
Carol. Thank you so much for having me.
And our readers look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks. Remember, you can find us wherever where you want to find your podcast, or on YouTube. Just search us as Book Reporter Talks to the Book Report Network. Thanks, everyone.